Think about this for a second. Every single day, you wake up and make decisions. Some of them are small. What to wear, what to eat, how to respond to a text. Some of them are big. Whether to take a new job, whether to forgive someone, whether to take that risk you've been thinking about for months. But underneath all those decisions, beneath the surface of what seems like free choice, there's an invisible framework running the show. It's not your skills, not your intelligence, not even your circumstances. It's your beliefs. Beliefs are the silent architects of our lives. They are the stories we whisper to ourselves so often that we don't even realize we're telling them anymore. They're like background music. You stop noticing the melody, but it still shapes the way you move. When you believe the world is a dangerous place, you walk through life on guard. When you believe you are unworthy of love, you sabotage every relationship before it can even bloom. When you believe opportunities are scarce, you hesitate and hold back, even when life is handing you something extraordinary. Here's what's both terrifying and liberating: our beliefs are rarely true. They are assumptions, interpretations, and half-formed conclusions that got cemented in our minds somewhere along the way. A teacher's careless comment, a parent's criticism, a rejection you never fully healed from. And yet, these tiny moments harden into rules you end up living by, sometimes for decades. Let me give you an example. Imagine a child who hears again and again that they're too much or not enough. Maybe they're told they talk too loud, ask too many questions, or don't have what it takes. They grow up, and now as an adult, they sit in meetings at work with brilliant ideas burning inside them. But they stay silent, not because they don't know what to say, but because of a belief they never challenged. My voice doesn't matter. Think of what's lost in that moment. Not just for them, but for the entire room that never gets to hear their contribution. Now, here's the catch: beliefs don't just shape how we see ourselves. They shape how we see the world. If you believe people can't be trusted, you'll find evidence everywhere you look. If you believe success is only for the lucky or the wealthy, you'll talk yourself out of even trying. Beliefs act like filters, coloring every interaction, every opportunity, every possibility. But let's flip that coin. What happens when your beliefs empower you instead of limiting you? Think about the person who grows up hearing, "You can figure anything out." That belief turns into resilience. When they face obstacles, instead of giving up, they lean in. They see problems not as dead ends, but as puzzles waiting for solutions. The difference isn't in their IQ or their resources. The difference is in the story they tell themselves about what's possible. This is why we can't afford to take our beliefs lightly. Every dream you've postponed, every chance you've talked yourself out of, every risk you avoided, behind all of it is a belief pulling the strings. And the danger is, most of us never stop long enough to question those beliefs. We live as though they are absolute truths, when in reality they're just opinions we forgot we had a choice in believing. Think about your own life. Think about one thing you've wanted to do but haven't. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's going back to school. Maybe it's telling someone how much they mean to you. Ask yourself, what belief is standing in the way? Is it the belief that you're not ready? That you'll fail? That people like you don't get to do things like that? If you trace your hesitation back far enough, you'll almost always find a limiting belief at the root. And here's the beautiful part: beliefs can be rewritten. They are not chains welded onto your soul. They are stories. And stories can be edited. You don't have to keep repeating, "I'm not good enough." You can start telling yourself, "I'm still learning," and that's more than enough. You don't have to live under the weight of, "It's too late for me." You can start saying, "I'm just getting started." The truth is, your beliefs are the most powerful force in your life because they dictate what you see as possible. They are the lens through which you view every chance, every relationship, every setback, every victory. Change the lens and the world looks different. Change the belief and suddenly doors that seemed locked forever begin to open. So tonight, I want you to walk out of here with this awareness. You don't live in the world as it is. You live in the world as you believe it to be. And if your world feels too small, too heavy, too unfair, maybe it's not the world that needs to change. Maybe it's the beliefs you've been carrying. Because once you understand the power of your beliefs, once you realize you have the authority to question them, challenge them, and rewrite them, you unlock a kind of freedom that no circumstance can take away. And from that place, there is no dream too big, no risk too scary, and no life too far out of reach. Failure. Just the word alone carries so much weight, doesn't it? Somewhere along the line, most of us learned that failure is something to be avoided at all costs. That it's a sign of weakness, of not being good enough, of embarrassment. We're taught that failing means you've done something wrong, that it says something permanent about who you are. And because of that, many people live their entire lives playing it safe, choosing comfort over growth, silence over risk, and regret over possibility. Not because they don't have the potential to succeed, but because they're terrified of failing along the way. But here's the truth nobody tells you enough: fear of failure is more dangerous than failure itself. Failure stings. Yes, it's uncomfortable. It can bruise your ego. It can even cause people to laugh at you. But failure is temporary. Fear of failure, that can last a lifetime. It's the quiet voice that convinces you not to raise your hand, not to apply for the job, not to tell someone you love them, not to try something new. And in that hesitation, opportunities pass you by. Not because you weren't capable, but because you never gave yourself the chance. Think about it. When was the last time you failed? I'm not talking about the little missteps like burning dinner or forgetting a meeting. I mean a real gut punch failure. The kind where you tried something you truly cared about and it didn't work out. For most of us, those moments are actually rare because we don't allow ourselves to even try. Instead, we rehearse failure in our minds so vividly that we talk ourselves out of it before we've even taken the first step. It's almost funny. If you think about it, we suffer the pain of failure without ever experiencing the lesson or the growth that comes from actually failing. I want to tell you a story. A young woman once dreamed of starting her own bakery. She loved baking, and people who tasted her cakes would tell her she had a gift. But every time she thought about starting, she'd get stuck on one thought: what if I fail? What if nobody shows up? What if I lose everything? So instead of trying, she kept the dream locked away. 10 years later, she's still working a job she doesn't love, scrolling past pictures of bakeries online, feeling that familiar ache in her chest. Did she fail? No. She never even gave herself the chance to fail. And that's the cruelest part of fear. It robs you of the very experiences that could change your life. Here's the irony. The people we admire most, the ones we look up to, the ones who inspire us, they are not the ones who avoided failure. They are the ones who failed over and over and over again, but refused to let those failures define them. Michael Jordan has a famous quote: "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game, winning shot, and I missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." Notice he didn't say, "spite of failure." He said, "Because of failure, success was built on the foundation of mistakes." Now, I know what you might be thinking. That's easy for Michael Jordan. He's a legend. But think about your own life. Every skill you have right now, every strength you rely on, it came through failure. You weren't born knowing how to walk. You fell and fell again until one day you figured it out. You didn't learn to ride a bike by reading about it. You wobbled, you scraped your knees, you got back up. Somewhere along the way, though, we stopped giving ourselves permission to fall. As children, we accept failure as part of learning. As adults, we treat it like a final verdict on our worth. And that belief that failure is fatal is what keeps us small. Fear tells us, don't even try. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't risk it. But the truth is, every time you avoid failure, you're also avoiding growth. You're trading temporary safety for lifelong limitation. And here's the question I want you to sit with. Which pain do you want to live with? The short sting of failing, or the heavy, endless weight of wondering, what if I had tried? See, failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. Failure can be the turning point, the teacher, the nudge that pushes you closer to your true path. The problem isn't failure itself, it's the way we interpret it. We say, I failed, therefore I am a failure. No, you failed, therefore you are learning. You failed, therefore you are growing. You failed, therefore you are alive and in motion. The only true failure is refusing to try. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you feel fear creeping in, the next time you hesitate because you're afraid of failing, I want you to flip the script. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe you'll look silly. Maybe you'll lose some money. Maybe you'll have to start again. And then ask yourself, what's the best that could happen? Because if you allow failure to be an option, you also allow success to be a possibility. Fear of failure will always whisper in your ear, but courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward anyway. Imagine if you gave yourself permission to fail boldly, to fall hard, to mess up spectacularly. How much freer would you feel? How much further could you go? So don't let fear of failure write your story. Fail. Fail often. Fail forward. Because every failure is proof that you had the courage to try. And that, my friends, is the only path to the kind of life worth living. Let's talk about something that has held more people back than lack of money, lack of time, or lack of talent combined. It's the fear of judgment. That gnawing voice in your head that asks, what will they think of me? It sounds small, almost harmless, but if you let it grow, It will control your every move. You see, human beings are wired for connection. From the very beginning, our survival depended on belonging to the tribe. To be cast out, to be rejected, that meant danger. So even today, centuries later, we carry that same instinct. We crave approval, we avoid criticism, we do almost anything to protect our image. But here's the truth: when you live your life trying to please everyone else, you end up losing yourself. Fear of judgment doesn't just stop you from doing embarrassing things. It stops you from doing meaningful things. It makes you shrink your dreams, water down your voice, and settle for less than you're capable of because the risk of someone laughing, criticizing, or gossiping feels unbearable. Think back to school for a moment. Do you remember how most kids would avoid raising their hands even if they knew the answer? It wasn't because they were unsure, it was because they were afraid of being wrong in front of everyone else. That same instinct follows us into adulthood. We don't pitch ideas at work. We don't share our art. We don't tell people our real opinions. Not because we don't have something valuable to offer, but because we're afraid of the sideways glances, the whispered comments, the judgment. I remember hearing a story about a man who dreamed of being a singer. He had an incredible voice, the kind that gave people goosebumps, but he refused to sing in public. At weddings, at family gatherings, even when friends begged him, he stayed silent. Why? Because one person in his past told him he wasn't that good, and that single judgment became louder in his head than all the praise he ever received. Imagine that. A whole life muted because of one voice, one opinion, one moment of judgment. The danger of fearing judgment is that it makes other people the authors of your story. Every choice you make is filtered through their imagined reactions. Should I wear this? What will they think? Should I post this online? What if they laugh? Should I chase this dream? What if I fail publicly? You end up living for an audience that may not even exist. And the cruel irony: the people you're so worried about are usually too busy worrying about how they're being judged to pay that much attention to you. But let me give you a different perspective. Think about the people you admire most, the leaders, the artists, the entrepreneurs, the change makers. Do you think they got there by avoiding judgment? No. They got there because they decided that their purpose was more important than someone else's opinion. Every groundbreaking idea, every bold move, every masterpiece was judged. Some people hated it. But if those creators had waited until the world was guaranteed to approve, we'd have nothing. No innovation, no art, no progress. So why do we still let judgment control us? Because deep down, we mistake criticism for truth. If someone disapproves, we assume they must be right. But here's the reality. Judgment says more about the person giving it than the person receiving it. Someone laughs at your dream. That's a reflection of their own fears, not your potential. Someone calls you crazy for trying. That's their limitation, not yours. Someone gossips about you. That's their insecurity speaking, not your worth. I want you to think about this. No matter what you do, you will be judged. If you play small, people will judge you for not aiming higher. If you aim big, people will judge you for being too ambitious. If you stay quiet, they'll call you timid. If you speak boldly, they'll call you arrogant. There is no path in life where you escape judgment. So the question is not, will people judge me? The question is, whose judgment am I willing to live with, mine or theirs? And here's the truth that can set you free. At the end of your life, the opinions of others won't matter. The people who criticized you won't be there in your final moments. It will be just you looking back at the choices you made. And in that moment, would you rather say, I lived safely so no one would disapprove? Or would you rather say, I lived fully, boldly, and authentically, no matter what they thought? Fear of judgment will always be there. It's part of being human. But courage is choosing to move anyway. Imagine if you stopped asking, what will they think? And started asking, what do I think? What feels true to me? What kind of life do I want to create? That shift changes everything. It puts you back in the driver's seat of your own story. So I challenge you tonight, the next time fear of judgment rises, pause and ask yourself, whose voice am I listening to? And is their opinion more valuable than my dream? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And if it's no, then step forward anyway. Speak your truth. Share your work. Chase your dream. Because judgment may sting for a moment, but regret will haunt you forever. And when you finally learn to live beyond the weight of judgment, you'll discover a kind of freedom most people never taste. The freedom to be yourself unapologetically. The freedom to pursue what matters. The freedom to know that you are no longer held hostage by opinions that were never yours to begin with. Let's explore the last limiting belief, perhaps the most subtle, yet the most destructive of them all, the belief that we are not worthy. This belief doesn't scream loudly like fear of failure or fear of judgment. It whispers. It hides in the quiet corners of our minds, shaping our choices in ways we often don't recognize until years have passed. And because it is so subtle, it can take root deeply, influencing relationships, careers, dreams, and even the way we carry ourselves through the world. Think about when you believe you are not enough, whether it's not smart enough, not attractive enough, not talented enough, not deserving enough. what happens? You lower your standards. You settle for jobs that drain you because you assume you can't do better. You accept relationships where you're undervalued because you think that's the best you can get. You silence your own ideas in rooms where your voice could make a difference because deep down you believe others have more to offer than you ever could. And here is the painful truth: people often don't reject us nearly as much as we reject ourselves. How many doors have you left unopened because you convinced yourself you didn't deserve to knock? How many opportunities have you watched slip because you told yourself you weren't ready, when in reality you were more prepared than most? It's not always the world holding us back. More often than not, it's the story we've accepted about our own worth. I once heard about a young man who dreamed of becoming a lawyer. He was the first in his family to even consider college, but when he shared his dream, people around him laughed. "That's too hard for someone like you," they said, and he believed them. He started carrying that sentence inside him: "I'm not cut out for that." So instead of pursuing law school, he took a series of small jobs, never advancing, never daring. Years later, he confessed he still thought about that dream almost daily. What held him back? Not his intelligence, not his resources, not even the laughter of those around him. It was the belief that he wasn't worthy of aiming higher. Here's what makes this particular belief so dangerous. It disguises itself as humility. We convince ourselves that playing small is noble, that downplaying our talents is modesty. But humility is not the same as self-rejection. True humility acknowledges your gifts while still leaving room to grow. Self-rejection denies your gifts altogether, and that is not humility, it is bondage. Now, I want you to imagine a child learning to walk. When they fall, do we ever say, "Well, you must not be worthy of walking"? Of course not. We cheer them on, we encourage them to keep going, because we know walking is their birthright. In the same way, your dreams, your growth, your potential, these are your birthright. You were born worthy. Worthy of love, worthy of opportunity. Worthy of growth, worthy of trying and failing and trying again. Nothing and no one can strip that worth away, except your own belief that you don't have it. This is why I say worthiness is not something you earn. It is something you accept. Too many people live waiting for permission to finally believe in themselves. They think, when I get that promotion, then I'll be worthy. When I find the right partner, then I'll be worthy. When I look a certain way, then I'll be worthy. But that's a trap, because the finish line always moves. You achieve one thing and the voice says, not enough. Try harder. You reach another milestone and the voice says, still not enough. The cycle never ends because worthiness tied to achievement is never secure. The truth is, your worth is not conditional. It does not rise and fall with your successes and failures. It doesn't disappear when you make mistakes, and it doesn't double when you win. Your worth simply is. Imagine living with that truth anchored deep inside you. Imagine walking into a room and no longer wondering, do I belong here? But instead affirming, I bring value here simply by being myself. That's not arrogance, that's alignment with reality. Now here's the shift: when you start to believe in your own worth, everything changes. You stop begging for scraps of validation and you start setting standards. You stop chasing after people who don't see your value, and you start attracting those who do. You stop hiding your talents, and you start offering them boldly, knowing they are needed. This isn't magic, it's the natural consequence of living from a place of worthiness instead of lack. And yes, the fear will still whisper. It always does. You're not ready. You're not special. You don't deserve this. But the difference is, you no longer take that whisper as truth. You recognize it for what it is, a leftover echo of an old story that no longer serves you. You can acknowledge it, thank it, and still move forward. Because when you know your worth, you stop waiting for the world to confirm it, you start living it. So tonight, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you settling because you don't believe you're worthy of more? What dream have you put on the shelf because you thought, that's not for people like me? And what would happen if just for once you assumed you were worthy? What doors might open? What relationships might shift? What possibilities might unfold? At the end of the day, every other limiting belief, fear of failure, fear of judgment, even doubt about your abilities, traces back to this one core issue: worthiness. If you don't believe you deserve better, you will never reach for it. But if you anchor yourself in the truth that you are worthy right now, not someday, not if, not when, but right now, then you'll finally start living with the freedom and confidence you were meant for all along. And that, more than anything else, is the belief that can transform your life. One of the most paralyzing beliefs we can ever hold is the belief that change is impossible. That who we are right now, the circumstances we're in, the mistakes we've made, the story we've lived, that's it. That's all there is. No more chapters, no rewriting, no second chances. And when you carry this belief, it feels like living inside a locked room with the key sitting in your pocket the entire time. I can't tell you how many people I've met who carry this quiet resignation. They say things like, this is just the way I am, or people like me don't get better, or it's too late to start over. And what they don't realize is that those words are not facts. They're sentences carved out of hopelessness. They're conclusions made from a handful of bad experiences repeated so often that they sound like the truth. But think about it. If you believe change is impossible, what happens? You stop trying, you stop growing, you stop imagining new futures. You look at your life, no matter how small or painful it feels, and you decide this is all you'll ever get. And so, you adapt not to your potential, but to your limitation. You settle into habits, routines, and identities that don't fit you, simply because you're convinced you can't be anything else. I knew a man who struggled with addiction for years. Every time he tried to get better, he would relapse, and every relapse became another nail in the coffin of his hope. Eventually, he stopped trying. I can't change, he told me. It's just who I am. And so he built a life around that belief. He cut off people who cared about him. He gave up opportunities. He stopped dreaming. He wasn't trapped by his addiction as much as he was trapped by his belief that change was impossible. And here's the tragedy, that belief made it true for a time. Because if you believe you can't change, you won't even attempt the small steps that could transform your life. But let me give you another story. A woman I know lost her job at 55. She felt humiliated. She thought she was too old to learn new skills, too late to start a new career. My life is over, she said. For a year she spiraled, convinced that her best days were behind her. But one day she decided to challenge that belief. She enrolled in a class on digital marketing. It was awkward at first. Most of her classmates were half her age. But she kept showing up. 2 years later, she wasn't just re-employed. She was thriving, running her own small agency, mentoring others. What changed? Not her age, not her intelligence, not her circumstances. What changed was the belief she carried about what was possible. That's the thing about this limiting belief. It blinds us to the fact that change is already happening. Look at nature. Seasons shift, rivers carve new paths, trees shed leaves and grow again. Change is the most natural law of existence. And yet we convince ourselves that somehow we are the exception, but we're not. You are not fixed in place. You are not cemented into your past. You are more like a river than a rock. You can flow, you can reshape, you can move in ways you never thought possible. Of course, change isn't easy. That's why so many people give up. They try once or twice, they stumble, and they declare, see, I can't change. But stumbling doesn't mean change is impossible. It means change is in progress. No one builds muscle in a single workout. No one learns a language after one lesson. No one rebuilds their life in a single day. Change is a process, not a moment. And when you accept that, when you stop demanding perfection from yourself and start respecting the process, everything becomes possible again. The belief that change is impossible is really just fear in disguise. Fear of discomfort, fear of failure, fear of starting over. And if you let that fear dictate your choices, you'll wake up years from now in the same place, wondering what could have been. But if you dare to believe, even just a little, that change is possible, then you open the door to transformation. That belief is the seed. And when you water it with action, with consistency, with courage, it grows into a new life. So I want to ask you right now, where in your life have you accepted something as permanent that doesn't have to be? Maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's the way you see yourself. What if that story isn't set in stone? What if just maybe it's clay and you still have the power to reshape it? Because the truth is this, the past is not a prison, it's a classroom. And the future is not a dead end, it's an open road. Change is always possible if you dare to believe it is. The only question is, will you choose to stay locked in the story you've been told, or will you choose to write a new one? The key is already in your hands. The only thing left is whether you'll use it. One of the most deeply rooted lies people carry is the belief that success belongs to other people, but not to them. It's that subtle voice that whispers, sure, others can do it. Others can achieve big things, others can rise above, build businesses, write books, change lives. But me, no, I'm just not cut out for it. And if we're honest, most of us have entertained this thought at some point. We see someone else shining, and instead of being inspired, we feel small. We say to ourselves, good for them, but that could never be me. Why does this belief have such a strong grip on us? It's because we've been conditioned to measure ourselves against the highlight reels of others. We scroll through social media and see people traveling, winning awards, living their dream lives, and we compare that to our ordinary, messy, behind-the-scenes reality. And in that comparison, we always come up short. It feels like there's a club of people who get to succeed, and somehow our name was left off the guest list. But let's dismantle that lie for a moment. Every single person you admire, every single person you look at and say, wow, they've made it, started as an ordinary human being. They weren't born with a neon sign above their head that said, future success story. They struggled, they doubted themselves, they made mistakes. The only difference is they didn't stop there. They kept moving, they kept trying, they believed, even if just a little more than you believe right now, that success was available to them. Think about Thomas Edison. Do you think he felt destined for greatness every time he failed, literally thousands of times before creating the light bulb? No. But he chose to see failure not as proof he wasn't worthy, but as proof he was one step closer. Or think of Oprah Winfrey, who was told in her early career she wasn't fit for television. Imagine if she had believed that success was for others, not her. The world would have been robbed of one of its greatest voices. When you believe success is for other people, you create invisible walls around your potential. You talk yourself out of opportunities before you even try. You play small because you've convinced yourself you're not meant for more. And the saddest part is, you never actually test the limits of what's possible for you. You live your whole life in the shadow of what you could have been. But here's the truth I want to plant deep inside you. Success doesn't have a chosen few, doesn't have favorites. Success responds to action, persistence, and belief. It doesn't care if you were born rich or poor, if you failed 100 times, if you're young or old. It only cares whether you're willing to take the next step, and the next, and the next. I once heard a story about a man who spent years watching others build wealth, others create businesses, others live with freedom. He always told himself, that's just not for me. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the connections. I don't have the luck. And so he worked jobs he hated, always looking through the glass at what others had. Then one day, someone asked him a simple question: what if success is waiting for you to stop disqualifying yourself? That question hit him like lightning. He realized he had been the one shutting the door all along. He began to try small things, reading, learning, starting side projects. 10 years later, he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving in ways he never thought possible. What about you? Were you telling yourself that success is off limits? Is it in your career, your relationships, your health? What dream have you secretly buried because you've already decided you're not the kind of person who gets to live it? Let me remind you, the kind of person who gets to succeed is simply the one who doesn't quit, the one who keeps showing up, the one who dares to believe that maybe, just maybe, what they want is within reach if they stretch their hand a little further. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, that's for other people, stop and reframe it. Instead, tell yourself, if it's possible for them, it's possible for me too. Because success is not a lottery ticket, it's a path, and you are free to walk it. The moment you step onto that path, everything changes. Remember this, the heroes you admire are not gods. They are humans who refuse to let this limiting belief hold them back. And if they can do it, why not you? Why not now? Why not start today, believing that success belongs not just to others, but to you? So here we are. We've walked through 6 of the most dangerous beliefs we can carry. The belief that we're not enough, the belief that failure defines us, the belief that we don't deserve happiness, the belief that we're not worthy, the belief that change is impossible, and the belief that success is reserved for everyone else but us. And maybe as you listen, one of those hit you right in the heart. Maybe it felt like I was speaking directly to you, calling out the exact story you've been telling yourself for years. If that's the case, I want you to pause and really hear me now. Those beliefs are not truths, they are chains. And chains only hold power until you decide to break them. You are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the lies you've repeated to yourself so many times that they sound like facts. You are possibility. You are potential. You are the living proof that growth, healing, and transformation are real because you are still here. And if you are still here, you are not done yet. The reason these limiting beliefs feel so heavy is because they're comfortable. They've been with you for so long that letting go of them feels scary. But comfort zones are not where life is lived. They're where dreams go to die quietly, and you don't have to let that be your story. So let today be the line in the sand. Let today be the day you stop saying, that's just the way I am, and start saying, this is who I can become. Let today be the day you stop looking at others as the lucky ones and start realizing that success, growth, and happiness are available to you too if you are brave enough to believe it. I can't promise you the road will be easy. It won't. You'll stumble, you'll doubt, you'll want to give up. But here's the truth, the only way to guarantee you stay stuck is to never take a step forward. The moment you choose to challenge even one of those limiting beliefs, the moment you dare to rewrite just one chapter of your story, that's the moment life begins to open up again. So my final question to you is this: what belief will you break today? Which chain will you throw off so you can finally start moving toward the life, deep down, you were made to live? Because the power is already within you. The door is already unlocked. The only thing left is for you to walk through it.